Hey, Sam, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me, brother.
Dude, I am excited to finally have you on the show, man. How you feeling?
Feel good. Excited.
All right. We've been working on this one for probably about 6 months, guys, just so you know. I get so backlogged on some of these, and Sam hit me up a while, and it was on the list, and I just remember at one point I was like, dude, totally spaced on Sam. So
happens.
this is the best part of interviewing a guy like Sam. Just so you guys know, I get this email from Sam. I love it. It says, I'm not sure my story is compelling enough for your podcast. I'm just the average, everyday, dried up drunk, taking it a day at a time. I'm not writing a book or running a marathon. I'm not climbing a mountain, and I'm certainly not a former pro athlete. I work 45 hours plus a week as an inside salesman for a utility body company. I play softball and coach youth softball. I love that. I volunteer at drug court and sit on a few coalitions to help prevent youth drinking in my community. I'm married to my best friend for 18 years, and I have 4 children. I've never sat in jail. I've never relapsed since I made the decision to get sober. I'm literally the average dude next door. That sound about right, Sam?
That's about right. That's perfect.
I absolutely love this, and I'll tell you why. More than anything, I just recently had I had a couple of weeks back. I had an issue with one of my guests. Right, I had to kill the episode, and I remember I had one of my listeners who sent me this really prudent private message telling me that I've heard some of the authors and some of the big names or whatever, right? But you know what? What I want to hear is the real guy next door, real story, real people, right? So I know you're listening. I'm not going to call you out. So I'm just going to say, this one's for you.
Well, I hope I don't disappoint.
Hell no. Oh, fuck. I love it. All right. So, folks, like I said, we got Sam Mooney on the show, and we're going to start by asking Sam what his normal daily routine is. So tell us, Sammy, what's that look like?
My normal routine is pretty simple. I wake up at roughly 6 o'clock in the morning. I hang out in bed until about 6:30. I read articles, figure out what's going on in the world, and I get up. I get ready. I take my daughter to school during the summertime. I go to work for sometimes 8 to 10 hours a day, and then I come home and I hang out with my kids. I mean, my daily routine is just about as simple as possible. I try to spend as much time as I can with my wife and my kids, because when I drank, I spent so much time away from them that now we're making up for lost time.
I love it. What's your recovery routine look like?
So I volunteer. Well, I'm at drug court every Friday from about 10 to noon. So I mentor some people there. Go out to lunch, share text messages, stories. Just kind of be a support system for them. I volunteer at the Humane Service Society here. So I spend, usually about once a week. I go there for anywhere between 2 to 4 hours a week for anything that they need from me. I sit on 2 different coalitions, like you said in that email, to one with the police department in town, and then one with the Human Service Agency in town. And that's just to try to help prevent youth drinking in our area. I live in a small town of 20,000 people, so there's not a whole lot to do here for people. And so that's kind of my recovery routine. Is I try to talk about it as often as I can to whoever's willing to listen, and I try to listen as often as I can to whoever's willing to talk.
Love it. Now, recently, you did speak somewhere recently, right?
Yeah. So I was at our local technical school here in town, and I shared my story in front of family, friends, and my community. And there was a couple hundred to a few hundred people there. And it was the first time that I'd ever done anything like that. It was the first time that I had a formal sharing of my story, I guess you could say, in that kind of setting. I think it went really well. I mean, there was a lot of tears. I got a lot of love afterwards, which was really cool. The mayor came up to me and shook my hand and gave me a hug and told me that, she said, you absolutely changed someone's life tonight. So that was pretty impactful for me. I thought that was pretty cool. And, since there, a lot of doors have opened after that. That's where the drug court thing came about. And, some of the other things that we've been able to do. So, yeah, it was cool. It was nerve-wracking as hell, though.
Buddy, I'm never not nervous when I share my story. I mean, I'm always ready to barf right before I get up. Like a stomach's spinning. I just told my story again. I can't tell you how many times I've told my story, but I got invited at I'm gonna release it here soon. But my local AA group said, "Hey, it's your 15-year anniversary." It was last Saturday. Share your story.
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. You got 20 minutes, and I got to figure out how to jam pack, my story into 20 minutes, right?
Yep.
And so the whole time I'm just like, nervous. But I tell you, like 4 minutes in, I'm pretty sure it was like 3-4 minutes in, boom, God took over.
Yeah.
When God takes over, man, because when they come up after you and they tell you, you know what, if they're crying and, it's like you changed somebody's life tonight, then it's like, oh, thank God took over.
Yeah, isn't that like, I love this, hey, we want you to share our story and we want you to be as impactful as possible. You got 20 minutes. You got 20 minutes to tell 20 years of addiction.
No pressure.
Yeah, none at all.
Like, I love it. All right.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
So one of my questions is always, how do you maintain, higher power is big for me, man. So I like people to tell me and the listeners, what their idea of a higher power looks like and how they maintain that spiritual condition on a daily basis.
Yeah. So, to be perfectly honest with you, man, I mean, I'm damn near 8 years, or I'm just over 8 years sober, and I'm still looking for it. I haven't had, I haven't really had that revelation, and I'm not sure why, because there's no reason why I should be here sitting talking to you today.
Spiritual awakening.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't know. I guess I don't have a good answer for you on that. I'm looking. I'm waiting. I don't know if I'm necessarily waiting for the right person or the right thing to come find me, but I'm searching, and I have been searching, and I know when it happens, I know it'll happen. So,
it's funny. We had that come up in one of the latest meetings we went to, because it was talking about higher power and that relationship with him, and it was an NA meeting specifically talking about spiritual awakenings, right? And so everybody's like, man, I just haven't had, not everybody, a few people were like, man, I just haven't had that spiritual, that moment that people talk about, and I was like, okay, so let me just tell you like what mine was, one of the many, right? Sure. I was praying for death the night before, okay? I woke up in the morning, right? I mean, I had done so many drugs the night before that I literally just hoped to die. Wife's pregnant, 6 months. I'm a train wreck. Just lost the business. We're in big trouble, right? Yeah. And I cannot stop using, and I hate myself, and I hate it, right? And so I woke up the next morning, 10 o'clock in the morning, and the first thought in my head was, man, you remember 10 months ago when that therapist told you should probably go to an NA meeting? You should probably go to an NA meeting. Yeah. I got up, I got dressed, all right? I drove straight to that therapist's office, right? And I said, I need help. My brother.
For sure. And I get that completely, because I've had a lot of those like that too. But I guess, I mean, there's a ton of them there that like that. I mean, shit, I could go on, and I'm sure I will eventually. And then you'll probably go
questions at the end. So I'm sure you will find it. I'll remind you as we're going through your story. I'm like, there it is. Sure. All right. So great. So you said 8 years. When's your anniversary date there, Sam?
April 25th, 2010.
April 25th, 2010. I love it, man. 8 years, baby. 8 years.
Yeah.
All right. So tell us, how old you were the first time you drank or used drugs, and more importantly, how did they make you feel?
Oh man, I was 12 years old, and it was like, where the hell have you been my whole life?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's crazy because like now, I have a 12-year-old daughter, and I'll get into it a little bit into my story, but like I could not even imagine my daughter having one beer, let alone several. So yeah, I remember it vividly. I mean, the first time that I ever like actually drank, I was 12. Yep.
And I love the fact that at 12 years old, you already had that feeling of ease and comfort, right? Like that, oh, where have you been all my life?
Yeah.
Which goes to show, there was some shit that happened to you prior to age 12.
Yep.
Like that when you finally got there, it was like, oh, dude, serious.
Yep.
Wow. I feel complete.
Yep. At 12.
That's what I'm saying. All right. Okay. So you're all warmed up, Sam. It's time for me to turn this show over to you. It's time for you to share your story. Battle against drugs and alcohol, the wreckage it caused in your past, the wreckage it caused in your life, when you hit rock bottom, and then finally your journey into recovery up until today. So Sam, take it away, buddy.
All right, man. Well, like I said, for me, really my personal hell began at the age of 12. So what I used to do is I'd go into my dad's refrigerator and I would grab one or two old Milwaukee Lights out of his fridge.
Horrible.
Yeah, we're off to a good start, right?
Yeah, right.
So I'd take one or two of those old Milwaukee Lights and I'd stick them up in my closet, and tuck them back in a way, put a blanket over them so nobody would find them, right? So then by the time that Friday rolled around, I had, 10, 11, 12 cans of beer. So the first time I drank was warm, old, skunked, old Milwaukee Light.
Oh, nasty.
Yeah. So it's pretty uncommon for anybody, or for like a 12-year-old to like any kind of beer. But not only did I like that, but I enjoyed it. So I mean, nobody should even like the taste of old Milwaukee Light, like period. Even like when it's cold.
Warm.
Yeah.
Warm old Milwaukee Light. Why don't I just piss in a glass? You know what I mean? Cheers.
Yep.
Oh.
Yep. Absolutely.
Wow.
So that was the first time. So and then like for me, I guess there's a handful of constants that have been in my life since I drank and since I quit. And anyone that knows my family and I knows that we're big fans of football, and so Sundays were a heavy drinking day for me. And so what I would do is I would get up at like 8 o'clock in the morning, and I would have my first beer gone by like 8:05. And by the time that the noon games rolled around, I was already drunk. I was pretty good and buzzed. By the time that the 3:15 game started, I was drunk. By the time the 7:30 game started, I had blacked out. Kept going. And then I would get home, if I got home, sometime between 11 o'clock at night and who knows whatever time in the morning. So during that time, my wife and my oldest son would sit at home, and this was years ago. So they would have the laptop sitting on their lap, and what they would do is they would watch my favorite team's football, or they'd watch the score, and those little bars came across the screen, and they watched those bars to see not only how our team was doing, but to see what kind of condition Dad was going to be in when he got home. Because a lot of my attitude at that time was based off of if the Eagles won or lost. So if they won, chances are good that I was going to be drunk, but I may be in a better mood than if they lost. So they did that, and then now fast forward to when I'm sober, my relationship with my wife and my kids on Sundays is completely different. So now we'll get up in the morning. We'll still get up early, but now I'll go into the kitchen and I'll help Audrey, who's my wife. I'll help her. I'll help her make food, our Sunday food.
Love it.
I haven't missed an Eagles football game with my oldest son in 8 years.
Oh man.
Well, I take that back. I missed one game because I went down to Dallas and I watched them play. And then I was out of state for work and they played. But Caden, my oldest, him and I sat on FaceTime for 4.5 hours while we watched the game together.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's it, and then to give you kind of another example of that, in 2004, the Eagles had made it to the Super Bowl, and we had my youngest son, Cameron, baptized that day. So we had family and friends from out of town, everybody come over for the christening and everything, and we had him back over to our apartment at the time. And so as soon as we get back from the christening, I'm drinking beer right away, and I kick everybody out of the house before the game starts, because football is more important than family, right? So anyway, so I start drinking, and next thing I know, I wake up and I'm in my youngest son's toddler bed. And I remember going, if I'm in his toddler bed, where is he? Well, I woke up, stumbled out of the room, went into my bedroom. My wife's gone. My kids aren't in their bedroom. And I went out into the living room, and I walked out to like what was kind of a metaphor of my life at that time. It was an empty room with a bunch of holes in the wall. And what happened was I got pissed off at the game, and I started punching holes in the wall, and I started yelling and screaming, and Audrey got scared, and her and the kids went to a hotel room for the night. And I had no idea. I had blacked out and had no idea what had even happened.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. So now, fast forward to today. So the Eagles made it to the Super Bowl this year and again played the Patriots. And instead of waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning, drunk, confused, and alone, now my wife, my 4 kids, and I were at the game. And we're there together, and we experienced that feeling of joy and being a family together. And when
you actually went to the Super Bowl?
Yeah, we went to the game.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we were in attendance for that. And when Tom Brady dropped back and threw a ball through that Hail Mary with 9 seconds left, I swear to God, man, that ball hung up there forever. Because it was like a really then versus now for me, like where my life was versus where it's at now. And it was like so 180, and it was such a surreal moment for me because when that ball dropped, it wasn't like that football team had won a championship. It was like I had came full circle as a husband and a father. And when they dropped and they won, the 6 of us got together and we hugged and we jumped up and down and we cried. And even talking about it now, I get kind of emotional about it because it wasn't just that football game, I mean, it was my life coming together. So that for me was pretty awesome.
That's beautiful, man.
Yeah. I mean, it was something else. So, and some of those things that I used to do when I drank, like when my kids were young, I used to coach their t-ball teams, and I remember taking those coaches' pictures or the team pictures, and I'd either be drunk or hungover. I've got pictures now where I just look like a wreck. My hair's everywhere, and you can tell that I'm not there. And now I coach a pretty successful youth softball team now, and those kids are, I mean, they're everything to me. 2 of those kids are my boys, my 17-year-old and my 15-year-old. And as good as those kids are on the field, they're even better people off of it. They volunteer and they raise money for cancer. They volunteer for our veterans in our area. They've had such an impact on me that if I've had half the impact on them that they've had on me, then, I feel like I'm doing a good job. But none of that stuff happens for me personally without April 25th. So, before when I drank and I got into ball, it was, it was an excuse to leave, I'd get away for the weekend, I'd get drunk. If we get into Sunday tournaments, and I'd get to the fields on Sunday morning. I'd throw up over the fence. I wouldn't show up on time. I wasn't reliable. Nobody could count on me to be there. I'd stay up until 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. I got kicked out of bars, get constant fights with my wife because she was embarrassed of me.
Yep.
And now it's just not. Now it's just not like that. Now it's everybody can rely on me. Everybody knows exactly who I am and what they're going to get. And now I'm in charge of 14 kids. What the hell is that? That's
full circle.
Yeah, for real. Yeah, it is full circle. I remember when I first had kids. I had to have people over to the house to babysit my kids when I was there.
Yep.
Because I couldn't be trusted alone with my kids. Not because I was going to do anything to them, but because they were infants, and I might as well have been an infant because I was drunk or hungover or passed out or blacked out in a different room. So, when I talk about like my 17-year-old now, his name's Caden, and I'm 2,955 days sober, and he still hasn't forgiven me for some of the things that I did when I drank. And that's, for me, that's pretty tough. But I don't know. So everybody's got birth stories, right? You see them on birth stories.
Oh yeah,
birth announcements and all that stuff. You see the balloon pop and it's blue or it's pink, whatever, and everybody starts yelling and celebrating and whatnot. My birth stories are a little different than that. So Caden is 18 years ago. I'm standing in the shower after I get home from work, right? And I'm drinking my beer in the shower because what responsible adult doesn't do that? And my wife comes in, and she hands me a pregnancy test, and it's positive. And I rip the pregnancy test out of her hand, and I throw it in the trash, and I say, "What the hell is this? This is garbage, and this is where garbage belongs." And I violently threw it in the garbage. And I was 20, maybe 19. So at 20 years old, I was a full-blown alcoholic. I was a monster, an awful person. I wasn't the husband that my bride envisioned. And eventually, like I said, I proved to be unfit as a father. And that was the first time. That was our first positive pregnancy. And then 2 years later, Audrey's facing another positive pregnancy test. And this time she has to call me at work because, why would she tell me in person after what I did the last time? So as soon as she told me, I immediately got pissed off. I took the phone. I was at work. I took the phone. I chucked it across the room. It blew up on the other side of the wall like it's her fault that she's pregnant, And looking back at it, I can't blame Audrey for telling me over the phone because of the way that I treated her the first time. And then in the blink of an eye, Audrey got pregnant again, and I'll get into that later. So, with our third child, I don't even remember how she told me that's how bad it was. Like, I was in a pretty dark spot when our third child was born, and I have no idea how she told me. But I do know that when all three of those first kids were born, I wasn't doing what I was supposed to be. When Caden was born, I didn't have a job. I had no insurance. I woke up in time to cut the umbilical cord and sign a piece of paper. And, and then after that, I drank. When Cameron was born, I put down my beer at about 4 o'clock in the morning, and Audrey comes into the bedroom and she says, "Sam, it's time to go. We need to go to the hospital. I'm going to have this baby." And I said, "I'm not ready. You need to give me about a half hour to sober up, because we're on my time." And when Jaylee was born, our oldest daughter, we were living 100 miles apart because I couldn't function as an adult at that time. So or she was living with her mom and her dad, and they took care of my kids and my wife when I couldn't. So, and then we ultimately wound up having a fourth kid, and Josie is her name, and this is probably about as close to my rock bottom as I think I can get. So, well, okay. So when Josie was born in November, and we got to I was working retail that night, right? I was working a second job, trying to get my shit together because I knew at that point that I was drinking too much. But anyway, so Audrey comes into work and she says, "Hey, I need you to come home right after work tonight because I think tonight's going to be the night that I have the baby." So me, in true Sam fashion, I say, "Yep, absolutely, I'll be there." And then I don't. I get off work and I go to the bar, right? So I'm sitting at the bar and I'm drinking my beer, and Audrey calls me and she says, "It's time. I need you to come home." Well, what I didn't realize is that when I was sitting at the bar, Caden, my 6-year-old son, is holding my wife's hand and walking her through contractions. So at 6 years old, my son has got more integrity than I do. And while the bartender is wiping rings off my bar in front of me, my 6-year-old son's at home wiping my wife's forehead, wiping the sweat off her forehead, and walking through contractions with her. So I come home, and mind you, I'm drunk, and I'm not just drunk. I'm drunk, and I put my pregnant wife and our unborn child into a car, and I drive them to the hospital. Somehow or another, I get everybody there in one piece, and we get checked in, and Audrey starts going into labor, and I pass out. I pass out in the bed in the couch in the hospital, and with that comes noises. I'm burping, I'm farting, I'm sneezing, I'm snoring. The whole hospital room smells like death. And it's all because of me.
Wow.
And yeah, so while Audrey's giving birth to our fourth and final child, she's making excuses for me on why I am the way that I am right now. So I wake up and I get my shit together in time to sign the birth certificate, cut the umbilical cord, and give her a name. And that was on a Friday. Saturday, I did all the right things, and I stayed at the hospital, and I did what I was supposed to do. Well, Sunday, there's a big football game on, and I need to be at home to watch that game. So I go home, and my other kids are with my in-laws, and Audrey's at the hospital with the new baby. And I go home, and I don't know what the hell happened, but I threw a party. And I woke up the next day on the other side of town. I blacked out. I was face down in a kitchen at in a trailer. And meanwhile, my wife is at the hospital in a wheelchair with our 3-day-old baby waiting for me to come pick her up. So her family is scouring the town looking in ditches to see if I'm dead. They're calling the cops asking, is today the day that Sam killed somebody? Is he in jail? And they're calling the hospital and they're asking, is today the day that Sam's dead? And at the time that was somewhat common. So Audrey, being the strong, resilient woman that she is, she winds up getting herself home. And what does she walk into? Another metaphor of our life at the time. The place was trash. There was cigarette butts on the floor, cigarette holes in the curtains. There was food on the ceiling, 70 to 80 empty beer cans, and I'm nowhere to be found. And then today, Caden, my oldest, is 17, but he's never drank a beer. Cameron, my 15-year-old, has never smoked a cigarette. Jaylee, my 12-year-old, she's never seen drugs, let alone smoke them. And Josie, my 11-year-old, she's never snuck out of the house to go get drunk, but, that was our lives then. Those were, pretty common experiences. And like I said, 8 years later, Caden still hasn't forgiven me, and I don't blame him, because he saw and did a lot more things than any other kid should have to do at that time, especially at the age of 6. And I hope one day that he will forgive me, and I'll spend the rest of my life making up for the mistakes that I made. But, honestly, I'm thankful for the relationship that I have with him today, because he gives me an opportunity to have a relationship with him. And like I said, he pisses me off. He's a 17-year-old kid, but, and he snaps at his sister more than I would like him to. But like I said, he's never had a beer, and none of my other kids have ever done any of that. And those are all things that I had to accomplish by the time that I was their age. So, oftentimes I think back to those quiet moments alone, that when I would wake up on an afternoon and after like a 2 or a 3 day binger, and Audrey would leave, and then I would have to go out into the living room and ask myself, like, what did I do? What happened last night? Trying to put together the pieces of what I did. And those those days sucked. I remember those vividly, because I wondered if whatever I did the night before was finally going to be the tipping point to where Audrey left me and she took the. And then I remember crying in that chair constantly, sitting in my living room by myself. I live in controlled chaos, man. I've got a wife, I've got kids, I've got, a dog and a cat. So, it's always loud at my house constantly. And those days waking up just in complete silence, being alone with my thoughts, were the worst. So then I started thinking, like, they probably left me because I came home at 4 o'clock in the morning and throw frozen food at Audrey's head while she was sleeping. And they probably left me because I stood at Audrey's head and screamed at her after a 3 day binger because she didn't have dinner ready for me. And they probably left because the kids are downstairs crying again because Dad's screaming at Mom and Dad turned into that monster again. Maybe they left because I was on day 4 of a binger and they didn't want to be around that. Or maybe they left because Dad tells them that it's okay to drink vodka at 7 in the morning because it's got orange juice in it. Or, Bloody Marys are all right because there's vegetables. They probably left because even when I was there, I really wasn't there, and I needed a babysitter to be around them. They left because they were scared to death of me, and they left because their lives were better when I wasn't there. And that's some pretty deep shit, and it sucks. But, none of those things happen to me anymore. Because I understand that I'm a work in progress, and, I haven't relapsed on booze during my recovery, but I've certainly relapsed on my behavior multiple times, and I'm very careful not to slide into that monster that I was. Hey, Billy, sorry.
No worries.
I'm careful not to slide into that monster that I used to be because, I understand what that monster tried to do, and I understand that he tried to kill me. And I'm, like I said earlier, I'm lucky to be here today. You talk about an aha moment, right? So, here I survived throwing up in my sleep multiple times. Audrey would wake me up and take her 2 fingers and shovel out vomit out of my mouth. And if she's not there, I'm dead. I survived the night that I, shut the garage door, turned the car on, and left the note on the side of the car, or left the note on the passenger side. Can't begin to tell you how many times I smashed into cars when I was drinking, going 65 miles an hour in a 25-mile-an-hour zone, blowing through stop signs and red lights, not hitting anybody. That because of that monster, I was going 70 miles an hour and blew through a red light. And there's a motorcycle that, thank God, was in the near lane, and he was able to swerve around me. And I was half a second from smashing right into him. I hit him, he's dead. I passed out in parking lots. I got into countless bar fights. countless drinking and driving incidences, drunk walk home, you know, and all those things I did because of a decision that I made when I was 12 years old. You know, that old Milwaukee Light for me at 12 years old is kind of, you know, that red Solo cup of today, you know. So, but that being said, I survived all those things and I was able to experience April 25th, 2010. And, you know, without April 25th, 2010, like I said, there's no doubt I'd be dead or in prison. So today, you know, and I get pretty emotional talking about that day because, you know, that day saved my life. And so I do a lot of self-reflection on that day. And just having that day about a month ago, it's still pretty fresh. And so every April 25th, or every April 25th, my father-in-law and my mother-in-law come over, and they bring me a card congratulating me on another year. They put that card next to a cake that my wife makes me, congratulating me, and then my kids bring over balloons that they get for me, congratulating me for that day. So, you know, that day is it's pretty awesome, and because of that day, I'll be able, you know, my kid and my oldest, he's going to go to college next year, and I'm going to get to be a part of that. You know, and my youngest son's going to chase another state title this summer, and I get to be there for that. You know, and eventually, Jaylee, my oldest daughter, is going to get married, and I'll get to walk her down the aisle. And eventually, Josie's going to have her first child, and I'll get to be there for that. You know, and then Audrey, you know, my best friend and the love of my life. I mean, eventually, we're going to be the last ones dancing at somebody's wedding dance because we're going to be married for 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 years. You know, and all that stuff is because of April 25th. So, you know, right now, as we said, I'm 2,955 days sober. So for me, I look at it as, you know, I'm 2,955 and 0 in my last 2,955 fights. You know, but I have to fight my ass off every day because of the decision I made when I was 12. You know, and I understand that one drink, one mistake, and everything I've accomplished in the last 2,955 days is gone. So, you know, I fight for another day, and, you know, I fight to get away from zero, man. Like, zero scares the shit out of me. You know, zero means I lose my wife, and means I lose my kids and everything that I've done. And like I said, that's all because of what I did when I was 12. So, you know, I look back a lot of the times and the things that I did when I was drinking, but more importantly, some of the things that I missed when I drank. You know, like when I quit, I sat at home and I took a week off of work and I detoxed by myself in my bedroom for about 3 to 5 days. And you know, when I was throwing up, I could have been throwing my kids in the air and spending time with my kids. And when I'm holding the toilet, thinking about, here I am holding this cold porcelain toilet laying on the bathroom floor, and I could be holding my daughter. And my daughter was pretty young yet when I quit. You know, and I'm wiping puke off my mouth and snot out my nose instead of changing a diaper. You know, and I remember my body aching from dry heaves and from being sick. Now my body aches from, you know, throwing my kids around, you know. So, and I remember going, you know, that one drink and that one bad decision at 12 years old landed me, you know, 20 plus years of addiction and fighting. And, you know, today I'm not proud of my alcoholism by any means, you know, and I'm not proud of, you know, some of the stories that I've told and some that I haven't. And I'm not proud of the fact that I've scrounged around in couch cushions for $1.80 to get a 40-ounce bottle of King Cobra so I could drown my kids. So I could, you know, chase death another day.
Drinking the nastiest shit ever, dude.
Well, you know, when you're in your early to mid-20s and, you know, you got to do what you got to do to get your drunk.
Seriously.
Yeah, it's pretty bad at that point, you know, but I tell you what, man, like, there's not a day that goes by that I'm not proud of my sobriety. You know, I've lost some friends because they say that I use friends lightly. You know, I should say friends.
Yeah.
Lost some friends. Yeah, exactly. You know, I've lost some friends over the years because they say that I talk about my sobriety too much.
Yeah.
That I talk about my recovery too much, and you know, that's fine. If you want to leave, leave. You know, like I said, I'm not proud of my alcoholism, but damn it if I'm not proud of my sobriety. And I'll scream that shit from the rooftop as loud as I can every day. But more importantly, man, like, I think the thing that I'm most proud of is Audrey and my kids know exactly who I am today. They know exactly who I am. And when I come in the door, whether it's at 6 o'clock at night or if it's 1 o'clock in the morning, they know exactly who I am. And they don't have to worry about me. You know, and a few things that I've learned through my recovery is, you know, right now, as we sit here today, as I'm talking to you, I am the happiest I've ever been in my life. And that doesn't happen, you know, without April 25th, 2010. I've found out that it's easier to be happy than it is to have all that bullshit in your life, man. Like, you know, my stressful days now is how am I going to get home from work, eat, get changed, and get to the softball fields on time for my kids' games instead of, is my wife going to leave me? How do I convince my wife not to divorce me? You know, and I've learned that it's a hell of a lot easier to, you know, hold a hand, you know, that you can't hold a hand with a closed fist when you're fucking fighting all the time. You know, and like today, people call me many things. I get called dad and coach and son and friend and, you know, probably asshole and maybe arrogant, whatever. But the one thing that nobody can ever take away from me is they call me sober. And a lot of times people ask me what I did and how I did it and how I'm doing it. And the one thing that changed my life forever, and I'll kind of wrap up with this, is Audrey and I were fighting, and she said to me, and you know, this is well over 8 years ago, so I mean, I still get emotional talking about it. She said to me, she goes, how would you like it if somebody treated your girls the way that you treat me? And I remember going, damn, you know, and because I treated her like shit for so many years. And then when you think about it like that and you put that into that perspective, it killed me. I mean, it was just heart-wrenching. So I got sober shortly after that. And it wasn't long. And I remember the first time that I remember having a problem was April 23rd, 2010 was the day that I remember that I had a problem because I had some people over for a draft party. And I remember sitting in the same recliner that I've sat in multiple times before going, you know, my life is a sham and, you know, Audrey's going to leave me. And anyway, so I remember sitting in this chair and I look over at the people that are at my house and they've got 2 empty cans next to them or 3 empty cans or maybe an empty drink. And I remember looking over to my left and I had 17 empty beer bottles sitting next to me. And I remember going, that's a problem. That's not right. So April 24th, 2010, I woke up and before my feet hit the floor, I knew that was it. I knew I was done. I put my face in my hands. I wiped the confusion off my face. I marched my ass into the kitchen and I told my wife, I said, that's it. I'm done. I'm never going to have another drink again. So that was April 24th. But I consider April 25th as my sober date because that was the first full day that I didn't have a drop of alcohol. So that's kind of my story.
Holy shit, dude. I hope you don't disappoint. Oh, man. You really, you got me. You got me a few times. Um, listeners, this whole time that Sam's been telling his story, I'm trying not to lose it, because I know what that's like, and he's got it times 4, right? I went through this with my one daughter, and he went through this with 4 children, one who still has not completely forgiven him. And I'm staring at this picture of his Facebook cover photo. The kids are very small. This is a long time ago, and I'm looking at his beautiful wife, and it's like, how did she even fucking put up with that shit?
I don't know,
like, I can't even fathom what kind of, like, I want to interview her. Like, I want to interview her. I want to know what it was.
Yeah, she can hear you. She's sitting on the couch listening right now. And I tell you what, man, you're not the only person that said that, because we do a lot of things. Well, not a lot, but we do some things like this. And she comes with me everywhere I go. She's and I'm not just saying this because she's because she can hear me, but she's easily the most important thing that's ever happened to me. And you talk about aha moments. Without her, she's something else. And people ask me all the time what I would do if the situation was reversed. And I say all the time, I would leave her. And I often ask myself why she stuck it out with me. And I've asked her, and she doesn't, she just says that she loves me, and that she took her vows seriously. And, she's my best friend. She's my inspiration. She's the reason why I get up every day. She's phenomenal.
Ask her if she prayed every single day.
She did. She told me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, I'm going to let you, when I ask this question, you decide which one it is, right? Because I knew I was going to find them. Those nights where you were by yourself, sitting there, asking all these questions, right? And it's like, did she leave because of this? Did she leave because of that? Did they leave because their lives were better? And that's a question that break anyone, because the truth of the matter is that any one of those days she would have left, right? Their lives are better. Right?
Oh, absolutely.
You know what I mean? And then this 3 to 5 day detox where you were in your house by yourself, where you could have died from alcohol withdrawals, right? God had a purpose for you, brother. That's just one.
Lying, man.
That's just one. So there's that, right? And then, dude, how would you like it if someone treated your daughters the way you treat me? Man, that was the one. That's the one that got me, man. And I think about my daughter. And the other day, I went to go pick her up I have her every 2 weeks, and I show up. She's got a little black eye right here, and and it was so small. She's got makeup on it. You know what I mean? And I walk in, and I'm like, what is that? And my ex-wife is like, easy does it. Easy.
Calm down.
My God. And my daughter's all surprised, and she's like, I can't believe you noticed. And she's like, oh, I knew it. I know your father. You know what I mean? And he notices the details, And I was like, what happened? It was just some comic story. They were chasing a mouse around the house, right?
Sure.
And she bumps into her mom while they're videotaping this, right? Yeah. And they showed me the video just so I could see it, right?
Right.
And I'm sitting there going, you know what? This is funny. But if you ever come home with a black eye, that's because some guy laid his hands on you.
Yeah.
Right? There will be no words.
Right.
There will be no words.
Yeah.
I will find him and he will disappear. You know what I mean? It was like, and here's the thing, dude. Guess what I did in that moment? I went back 15 years. And I thought about the hell that I put my ex-wife through, and the living amends that I have been doing for the last 15 years, you know. I mean, one of the coolest things about my relationship with my current wife, right? She is a saint. She's an angel, right? And she allows me to put my ex-wife in a certain place where I'm just constantly making those ongoing amends, right? Whenever I can.
That's fantastic.
You know what I mean? And that's not just for her. It's for my daughter too, because I want her to know what a real man does.
Absolutely.
Real man takes responsibility. And the cool thing is that, I know your son, he's the oldest and he's having a tough time with this, right? But I don't think the girls know about it, do they?
Yeah, my girls know. My entire family knows everything.
No, but I mean, like, how old are the girls now?
Jaylee, my oldest, is 12, and my daughter's 11.
Okay, so they were around. Okay,
yeah, they don't remember a whole lot of it. They remember some, but I've told them stories mostly because I want them to learn from the mistakes that I make.
Absolutely.
I don't want them to go down that same path that I went down. I want them to be better people than I am.
Well, guess what? They don't drink. They don't party. They don't sneak out of the house. You know what I mean?
Oh, right.
Great job, Sam.
Yeah, that's why I tell everybody, I took one for the team. I just went down, 10, 15 years of addiction and alcoholism, so my kids won't do it.
Dude, I think it skips a generation. I'm not even, I think for some of us it skips. My daughter is perfect, right? She doesn't drink. She doesn't smoke. She's 15 years old. She completely behaves herself, has never thought about dyeing her hair, only has the piercings here. You know what I mean? Hates my tattoos. I mean, she's just a whole different individual, right?
Yeah.
It's like, how did she even come out this awesome? But I'll tell you what, my ex-wife is a lot like Audrey, man. She is a saint and gave her whole life to her kids. She's got another son, with Marissa's stepdad.
Cool.
And her whole life is about the kids and your wife's, it's all about the family. You know what I mean? It's like these amazing women that we have in our lives. And now, anyway, you look at it, right? We have an obligation to live an ongoing amends for the rest of our lives.
Absolutely.
So that's all it is. Like if we just live that ongoing amends for the rest of our lives, then win, right? And go into the game and, watching the Eagles win, you know what I mean? Like that's just, I mean, that's a miracle all in of itself, dude. Right? Like you said, you were sitting there watching that ball hanging in the air, right? Spiritual awakening, brother.
I tell you what, man, like I've went to, you can see the video on my Facebook page because I went Facebook Live on it, and it was crazy. I mean, it's like one of those days that you don't forget it because everything was so perfect. And yes, football was the centerpiece of it. I mean, it was the quote unquote main event, but you strip that stuff away and you look at the bigger picture at where we were versus where we are. And, like I can watch that video 1,000 times and I cry every single time because it was just so perfect. I mean, and I think about that often. I do because, I mean, waking up that day in 2004 and having them be gone to, 14 years later to being there and sharing that moment with my kids and Audrey. And no matter how old the kids get, they will never forget that. Ever. And without my recovery and without April 25th, that day doesn't happen. And I'm incredibly fortunate to have Audrey in my life because everybody hears me say all the time that my recovery is the most important thing in my life. And I'm fortunate that Audrey understands that. And she understands that without that day, we don't have 18 years of marriage. Birthdays, I mean, my birthday, my actual day of birth, it means nothing to me anymore. And she gets that. She understands that. I mean, she still makes a big deal out of it because she's awesome and that's what awesome people do. But, Like we don't cry and we don't hug or, get together and make a big deal out of it like we do April 25th. So, that's my day.
I'll tell you this much. Two things. Number one, tell Audrey that I just interviewed my ex-wife 2 weeks ago. So that interview is going to go live if she wants to hear that one. And I interviewed Sarah Mabry. She's the wife of John Mabry that I interviewed a couple weeks back. He's the guy who lost his leg in a car accident. She tells her story. We did a 2-hour interview. She had a lot to say.
Yeah, I bet.
So tell Audrey that she's got a standing invitation anytime she wants to tell her story.
She's smiling.
I'd love to hear that. Okay. And then number two, all right, there's 8 years clean.
Yeah.
The 5 years, right, is when you hear the, okay, you get your head out of your ass finally after 5 years, right?
Yeah.
So what was those? Tell us how that transition was. That 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years in early recovery.
Well, the first year sucked. To be honest, because Audrey and I were fighting constantly. With our marriage, I got sober in 2010. We got married in 2000. So, damn near a decade of our marriage was she was fighting for us in those 10 years. And then by the time that I got sober, I had broken her so bad that she had just completely given up on me and everything, including herself, with the exception of the kids. So I was fighting for our marriage at the time, and she was just completely broken. So I was trying to fix myself, fix our marriage, help Audrey find out who she is. And so we fought a lot that first year. And then the second year of my sobriety, I was trying to figure out who I was, because I had to change everything about me, my personality, how how it is. And then that third year was finally really when I could really start understanding what I went through. And that's really kind of when I really came out and said, I'm an alcoholic. I'm, 3 years sober or whatever. And that's when I really started opening and talking about it. And then year 4 and 5 is when I just kind of honed in on really who I was as a person, as a father, and as a husband. And, where I was as a recovering alcoholic too. That's when I started putting myself out there more, is when I finally started understanding more about what I did. And then that's when people started reaching out to me, and asking me advice on how they could get sober. So, which in turn helped me stay sober.
So, that's perfect. That's exactly what our listeners want to hear, right? Like, there's so much of the reason why we drink. The reason why we were 12 years old and drinking warm beer out of the closet that was under a blanket, that whole imagery is just horrific, is because I need instant gratification from something. There's something very, very wrong, and I need to disconnect from it. So the listeners want to know, because it's like, here's my life today, right? And it's funny, I just had a conversation with a guy this morning, right? And he was like, yeah, but, look at your life and this and this and that. And I'm like, dude, I'm 15 years clean and sober. Yeah. Let's talk about my first 5 years alone. Rock bottoming my life, wife leaving me, you know what I mean? Trying to figure out what I was going to do for a living, right? First year was like a nervous wreck. I mean, come on, man. I mean, you can't look at now and just go, but look at you now, right? We have to go back in time and say, dude, my first year, I was trying to fix my marriage because my wife was done. And I'm doing everything that I can to keep things together, right? Boom. That's number one. And then second year is just I'm figuring out who the hell am I, right? Now I'm this sober guy. And so I'm curious because, I do a lot of coaching.
Yeah.
And, you know, it just, things start to, you know, little things catch my attention. And so immediately I asked myself, what is it that a 12-year-old boy needs to disconnect from, that he's hiding beers in his room, collecting them so he has enough to get the desired effect, already recognizing and figuring out what it is? Did you ever do the work, you know, from your childhood that led up to that?
I've asked myself that question quite a bit of times, and you know, there's alcoholism that runs in my family, you know, and I never wanted to blame anybody for any of the decisions that I made, whether I was 12 or 25.
Right.
And you know, I made that decision. You know, my dad didn't force me to drink. You know, I don't know why any 12-year-old would want to drink. You know, or I don't know why any 14-year-old would want to drink, but for some reason, that's what I knew. That's what I did. And I don't fault anybody for that but myself. You know, I don't fault my dad for having a case of beer in the fridge every day. You know,
that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
It's just that's the first place that I'd want to start, because, you know, there is something, and it has, and here's the thing. That's the cool thing. It's not about blame.
No.
Right? It's not about blame. I mean, somewhere along the lines, even though you're having issues with your son even today, what you do now as an ongoing amends is what's important, and it's made him a better man, right? Because of it, right? The way he treats his wife, the way he treats his girlfriends is going to be reflective, right, of everything that he learned growing up, right?
Well, I'll tell you this, man, that, you know, when I was growing up, the relationship that I saw my mom and dad have, I knew I wanted a healthier relationship with my wife. My kids now, they see Audrey and I dancing in the kitchen, and they see us laughing and giving each other playful slaps, you know. And I want, if Audrey were to ask me that question right now, how would you like it if somebody treated your girls the way that you would treat me? My honest answer to that now would be fantastic.
I love it. I love it. And that's the thing. It's the ongoing amends and the legacy I leave behind. Yes. What is the legacy I leave behind? I know me. I die tomorrow. I know exactly the legacy I leave behind.
Yeah.
That's what's important.
Yeah, I like that.
That's what's important.
I really like that.
Dude. Roller coaster ride, Sam.
Yeah, for sure.
Dude, that was amazing. That was amazing.
I mean, like I said, man, I mean, I listen to your podcast a lot, and, you know, I'm just a desk junkie, right? You know, I sit behind my desk and I talk to people on the phone. I fire off emails, you know, and I'm literally the average dude next door. And, you know, when I have time in between phone calls and emails and stuff, I listen to your podcast and I listen to some of these stories, and I mean, they're all fantastic. But, you know, like I said, I mean, I'm not writing a book, and I don't really have any intentions to. And, you know, I'm about 40 pounds overweight right now because it's just the start of the season, you know. So there's no marathon in my future, brother. I mean, I just don't see that happening. You know, but, like, my story, I feel, is unique because of those things. That's makes me who I am. And I'll tell you this, you know, as far as kind of the last bit of my story, you know, anytime that people ask me to share my story, I mean, I tell them all the time, whether I'm talking to 16-year-old kids or if I'm talking to 45-year-old men, that I could sit here and share drunk stories with you for hours upon hours, but everybody has those. Even people that aren't alcoholics, they have drunk stories because, I mean, somebody at one point in time was stupid and drank too much booze. It happens. But I don't do that. I'd rather focus on the recovery and those positive moments. But, you know, Audrey and I have been married. We started dating in 1997 when I was 17 years old. and we got married 3 years later. And after I got sober, we fought constantly. And I remember sitting in the bedroom talking with her one night, and I remember going, "Why are you with me?" I mean, because like I said, at that time she was broken. She didn't like me. She loved me still, but she definitely didn't like me.
Oh yeah.
And I remember going, because at this point I'm searching for just a nugget. Give me something. Why are you with me? Why do you like me? Mind you, 4 children and 10 years of marriage and 13 years of relationship. This is the best that she can come up with. She says, "Well, you're good in the sack and you're pretty good at softball." 13 years, 10 years of marriage, and that's what I get. Not that you're a good dad, you're fun to be around, or my life is better when you're around. I get that.
Dude, back then I would have taken that.
Yeah, for sure.
I would have taken that all day long, brother.
I definitely did not get pissed, I can tell you that.
Those are 2 positives.
Yeah, for sure.
I'll take it.
But now that answer is different. So, it's all good.
Oh man. All right, buddy. Let's start closing up, brother. And we close up for the newcomer. So I'm gonna ask you 5 questions about your early recovery. I want you to respond with answers that will inspire our newcomers. Are you ready?
Yes, sir.
Okay, number 1. What was keeping you from getting clean or staying clean when you first got introduced to recovery?
You know what? I didn't really know what sobriety was. Never really been around it. I knew one person that had been sober. So I think what kept me from getting clean and staying clean was ignorance. I didn't know.
Yep. And you know what, man? That's what's awesome about what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
Okay. When I got sober, it was pretty much the same thing, because I went to a therapist who told me, "I think you should go to an NA meeting." And I was like, "What? What is that?" Yeah. Not like the AA stuff, because I don't need any of that shit. You know what? And now you just Google it.
Mm-hmm.
And podcasts and videos and, celebrities, and the recovery does not have the stigma that it had before. So yes.
No, and it's awesome, because like I tell people now, the people that I talk to, you're absolutely right. It does not have the stigma that it had before. You don't have to be embarrassed to be in recovery anymore.
Correct.
And which I think is fantastic.
Absolutely.
I mean, April 25th, my social media page blows up all the time. And the love that I feel that day is love. I'm not ashamed, like we talked about earlier. And I think it's phenomenal that stigma is going away.
Absolutely.
Or it could even be gone,
We're a very big part of that. What we're doing right now is a big part of making recovery, man, look very attractive.
Yeah, for sure. And I tell people too, because I'm not a big AA guy, and I understand. I don't want to deter from anybody that out there that does AA. I mean, I know it works for a lot of people, and that's fantastic. But I tell people all the time, when you're comfortable, break your silence. Break your anonymity, whatever. Help me.
Anonymity. That's fine.
There you go. Break that, because somebody broke theirs for me, and I broke mine for somebody else. So pay it forward.
Beautiful. I love it. Pay it forward. All right. So number 2, at what point, here it is. At what point did you have a spiritual awakening, that aha moment in recovery, when you accepted that you were powerless over drugs and alcohol, but for the first time had developed the hope that you could recover?
I don't know, man. I don't have a good answer for you on that one. I knew that, like I said earlier, year 3, I knew I could do it. Things started getting a little easier. I started understanding more. I started asking more questions. Had a lot of aha moments.
Yes.
Looking back on it now, had a lot of aha moments.
We make such a big deal out of the spiritual awakening, but it's just a change in mindset.
Yes.
It's all it is. right?
Yes.
You have this thought that comes into your mind and you're like, whoa, that's new.
Yeah. Well, and I can tell you too, like the new part, that thought that comes into your mind and says, excuse me, you go, well, that's new. When I got sober, nobody told me that I had to feel. Like I got feelings and like I have to deal with them now. What the hell is that? Like if I get pissed, I can't go and hammer down a case of beer. And if I got a buddy that I haven't seen from out of town for 3 months, I can't go on a 3-day binger. Like what? Like I bought a house and I'm crying because I'm so happy. What? Like shouldn't I have like 40 people over to get hammered? So that was like goofy for me. It's like, damn, I got feelings and I have to deal with them now. So that was a big adjusting, but shoot, that's been like one of the biggest aha moments ever.
Boy, after this interview, you're just gonna be walking around going, oh, there's another one. Shit.
Probably. It's a good thing.
All right. So number 3. Do you have a favorite book that you could recommend to our newcomers that you read in early recovery or you're currently reading?
I'm reading Live to Forgive by Jason Romano. It is it's pretty solid book. It tells the story of his father, Jason's father, who was at the time was an alcoholic and now he's in recovery. So it kind of gives the readers that point of view that maybe we don't listen to or hear very often.
Dude. Okay. That's never been recommended, but I love it. It sounds like an amazing book.
Yeah, it's and then there's a lot of spiritual side to it too. So
beautiful. I love it. All right. Number 4, what is the best suggestion you have ever received?
I don't know if it's so much a suggestion, but I go back to what Audrey told me. When Audrey, there's another part of that. When Audrey asked me when I was going to be a man and break the chain, because there's alcoholism that runs in my family, and so I don't know if that's really a suggestion, more of some advice. And then of course when she told me, how would I like it if somebody treated my girls the way I treat her? Those are life-changing.
Dude. How could they not be? Oh, God. I'm having a tough time with her scooping the vomit out of your mouth.
Oh yeah.
Dude.
Yeah.
The woman is a saint.
She is. She's amazing.
All right. Whew. Okay, number 5. If you could give a newcomer only one suggestion, what would it be?
Easy. I'd celebrate every early success you have.
Oh man.
If you've never gone 24 hours being sober, once you hit that 24-hour mark, celebrate. Go have dinner, give yourself a pat on the back, smile, take time to reflect. Once you hit a week, do it again. Once you've hit 2, do it again. You get 30 days, go out for dinner. You get 60 days, celebrate it. I did that all the time, man, early on in my recovery. I'd never gone 30 days before. So when I hit 30 days, I was like, yeah, how about that? I get 90 days, it's like, yep, this is going good. I can do this. And I tell people all the time, man, celebrate those early successes. So oftentimes we've never gone that far before. Like even now, like I got 3,000 days sober coming up on July 11th. I took that day off of work. I'm going to celebrate that day. I'm going to go out to eat with my family. I'm going to, we're probably going to have cake and ice cream. We're going to celebrate that day because I've never been 3,000 days sober before. So yeah, I tell everybody, celebrate early and celebrate often.
Celebrate early, celebrate often. That is probably one of the best suggestions we've had on the show. And I'll tell you why it's so important. A lot of what I do with my coaching clients is I have them keep a win journal, right?
Sure.
Just so they can every single day write the things that you can classify as a win. Something that you can say, man, I did that today, because they spend so much time beating themselves up. I didn't do this right. I didn't do that right. I still can't do this right. It's only 30 days.
Yeah.
Right. It's all this minimizing the wins, the things that are so important, to celebrate these things that we should be screaming, like you said, from the rooftops. But anything that goes bad, oh man, I will just pound on myself with a loudspeaker.
Yep. Yeah, I hear people in drug court say that all the time. The judge will ask them how your week went, and they'll go, "Oh, it's pretty shitty." And the judge is like, "Okay, well, what happened?" And he's like, "Well, I only made it to 4 meetings instead of 5, and I only got 38 hours in at work." And it's like, well, wait a minute, like back up. Like you hit up 4 meetings that week. You're 62 days sober, and you've never been, 62 hours sober, let alone 62 days. So I tell people that all the time. Celebrate those successes. Because if it was easy, then everybody would do it.
Yes.
And anything that's worth doing isn't easy. So celebrate that shit and celebrate it often.
Dude, and that is how we're closing. Sam, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, man. It was an honor.
Whew. Amazing story. Amazing story. Thank you. Thank you for not disappointing.
I appreciate everything that you do for the recovery the recovery community, and the time that you take, and your response and your openness is I may have gotten sober a little bit earlier had I known that you were out there. So appreciate everything you do. Much obliged.
Dude, thank you. Wow, that's beautiful, and I appreciate those words, and I appreciate you, brother.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you, man.
All right, we've now reached the end of our show. Thanks for joining us, and as we say here in Costa Rica, pura vida.
Pura vida. I probably just butchered it completely.
No way, dude. Go.
Hey.
It's good.